This is John Prestige from Repack Espresso in Bath. Today I'm going to be talking about how to make a really fruity complex coffee using one of these, which is an Aeropress. Now we're going to use it in a different way to the way it's intended. We're going to use it inverted. It was originally intended to make something more like a long black. We're going to use it to make a much fruitier coffee that's got a nice level of complexity. Now I'm using Round Hill's Colombian single estate coffee, which is a light blend. I've measured out 15.1 grams of beans there. I'm going to grind in a minute. That's what you need your scales for. These scales will go down to 0.1 of a gram because dose is the main way that you control the flavour of the coffee. You'll need 210 grams of water, between 210 and 220 is probably about right. You'll need it about 94 degrees, so you can use your kettle, or if you've got a special kettle that you can set to a preset temperature, put it at 94 degrees. I'm going to use my espresso machine, which is set to deliver me 210 grams of water at 94 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my grinder. Now I've got a little Malconi filter grinder with steel burrs that produces a unimodal particle distribution. What that means is it produces mainly one size of particle, or size of particles that are in one very specific range. Filter grinder will do that. It will be a unimodal particle distribution. An espresso grinder will generally produce two types of particles. It will produce bigger ones and smaller ones called fines, very small ones. Now that's fine for espresso, not so good for filtered coffee. So even your espresso grinder on its coarsest setting will not necessarily produce the best results for filter coffee. What you need to do, if you've got an espresso grinder and don't want to spend out on a filter grinder, get something like a Hario hand grinder. They're about £25 and they'll produce reasonable results, and they'll produce a reasonable particle distribution within one range. Okay, so I've measured out 15.1 grams of my beans. I'm now going to grind them to order over here with my little grinder. In the meantime, I'm going to wet the rubber part of the Aeropress. I'm going to put it like that on the counter. Then I'm going to put the two bits together. Now you may notice that this is the opposite way round to the way it's intended to be used, but that's just how we do it. You get a better infusion that way. Okay, so I've got my grounds now. So I've got about 15.1 grams of it. I was aiming for 15 grams because I lose a bit in the grind, I lose a bit to the edges of the espresso cup. I'm now going to pour those into the Aeropress, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a shake so that we get a nice flat bed there for the water to go onto. Now what I'm going to do now is get a 210 grams of water, and in the meantime I'm going to just wet my paper filter. So I'm going to take my paper filter and I'm going to stick it in my cup of hot water over here, and that will remove any nasty papery taste that you may get if you use it without doing that. Okay, so we stick that in the top of the portafilter where the filter goes. Now I've got my water. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to weigh that over here to make sure I've got the right weight. So I'm going to pour a little bit away because it's given me slightly more than I wanted. Then I'm going to do a nice pour into the Aeropress so that we get a nice infusion of the coffee. And from this moment I'm going to time it. I want about 1.5 minutes. Now you can experiment with time. Usually 1 minute to 1.5 minutes is a reasonable time for that. And then I'm going to give it a stir. Now I use this plastic Aeropress stirrer, but lots of people use bamboo ones. I've not noticed a massive difference myself, but some people do. So you can get a bamboo stirrer if you want. Probably makes a small difference. And now I'm going to stick the filter on. Okay, my receptacle over here is ready, and I'm going to put that on the top here so that when we flip it over and start the actual pressure part of the extraction, it's going to go into the stainless steel jug. Okay, so just over 1 minute so far. We've got about 30 seconds to go. Obviously you can experiment with different times. 1 minute, 2 minutes is probably quite a long time. Usually you look at about 30 seconds for the next phase, which is actually putting the pressure on it, which is coming up shortly. So I'm going to stick the jug there, and I'm just going to get the air out of the Aeropress so that we don't get any air coming through between the plunger and the coffee itself when we flip it over. So that's 1.5 minutes, flip it over, try not to get coffee everywhere, and we'll see we've got a nice distribution of particles there. I'm just going to push that down, and I'm aiming for 30 seconds of consistent pressure. Now it's not always that easy to be consistent here, but practice will help. So we've got about 10 seconds left, 5 seconds now, and we're done. Okay, so if we put that to one side, we'll see as we pour it that we've got something